Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? Last night, offensively, was really tough to watch, obviously, but Alvin Kamara, he just continues to shine. Sean, where do you put him among the best non-quarterback offensive players in the NFL?
I don't see how, considering the overall weapons on their team and what he's done since he's been in the league, and I can make the argument over the last 2 or 3 years he's been their best player on offense with Drew Brees or Michael Thomas there, regardless. When he's been on the field, meaning Michael Thomas, and when Kamara's been on the field, I'm sitting here on the top of my head thinking, okay, non-quarterback, guys that are in his class. I'm not saying he's in their class, guys that are in his class. And I was a teammate with Roger Craig, and he, with the landmark last night, in another epic night for him, with he and Roger Craig, 3,000 yards rushing, 3,000 yards, I think, receiving is what it is. Roger Craig I think Roger Craig's a Hall of Famer. And Kamara's got more wiggle than Roger, and Roger was a phenomenal football player. I would say in his class, you can grab a few receivers, guys. I think when a tight end's at their best, and we see these guys now, there's a couple tight ends that are impactful. We see what Kelsey's done, but at this stage of the game, I'm not sure he's more impactful because of their weapons and with the other guys they got, considering that he can be a one-man wrecking crew. A lot of these other teams have 2 and 3 weapons to go to, so it creates more space. I'll put it this way. You're not getting to number 3 or 4. For sure not he's not outside your top 5. If there's a Mount Rushmore current of guys that aren't named quarterbacks that impact the game and a team on offense, Alvin Kamara, he could do more. He could do more. He could catch 100, and I believe he could catch 100 balls. I believe he could rush for 1,000 yards. I believe he could, rush for more than 1,000 yards and catch balls for 1,200 or 1,300 yards. I believe that every year. I think he's that good. So as long as he's healthy, Derrick Henry's in the category. He's got better hands than Derrick Henry does. Derrick's a better straight line runner than he is, but Alvin's got more wiggle. You go back and forth with those guys. But when you're just talking about overall weapons and what he means to a team offensively, I'm not sure you can get to 4 or 5 that are in his class. He's in that elite category where the 3 or 4 best are outside of quarterbacks.
So I'm glad you went he could do more. Because I was going to ask you the workload question. So 30 touches last night. At what point, Sean, do you begin to worry about durability and sustainability?
I got to tell you now, I think that at that position you always do, Matt. It doesn't matter. The question is, okay, if you keep giving him touches, and as John McKay said, the great coach said, the ball ain't heavy. And the question is, I watched Marcus Allen do this as a freshman at SC. We threw it to him. We handed it to him. He blocked. He was one of the best blocking backs I'd ever seen in my life, and he was throughout his career, short yardage. I remember we were playing Corso's team in Indiana, but this was a weekly thing, and Marcus, it was his first time any running back had run for over 2,000 in college football. On like his 40th carry, we were in 35 carries. We were at Indiana and Corso's team, and Marcus used to look guys up near the sideline. He wasn't going out of bounds. And I feel the durability, Marcus was like a miss-me guy, if that makes sense, that if he didn't want you to hit him, that he could get skinny and sideways and still make a play. But if he wanted to hit you, he could unload on you because he was an explosive, but he was about 6'2", 205. Marcus was a big man and played bigger. But this is going to sound selfish, Matt. I'm not worried about his workload. I'm not. Now, I understand that, well, if you'd have cut it back here, now, then we get him in his 12th year. I don't know many backs in their 12th year that are dominant backs now. I understand players want to play as long as they can. I need him. As long as those 30 touches aren't between the tackles, taking on Mike linebackers and strong safeties without a blocker there, and it's in that 5-yard range where it's brutal, constant punishment, like what you see Derrick Henry issue. I don't think Kamara's built for that. I don't think many are. But if you get him, I'd even devise more. He'd be playing, I'd be running slants to him, and Sean's smarter than I am at this, but I would do everything. I'd get him. I'd try to throw it to him 10, 12 times a game to where those screen passes, the slow screens to where he got it in space where you can see his vision, and if he has to step out of bounds when necessary in the second quarter when you're up by a touchdown and he already got the first down and doesn't need to run somebody over, I don't think 30 is too much. 30 in between the tackles carries and there is a difference. Yeah. 30 in between tackles carries is different, but Kamara's ability to catch it, get to the flat, run a corner route, I'd put him at slot, I'd motion him, I'd stick him in the pistol, I'd stick him in the I formation, I'd stick him in the slot, and I'd deploy him. We saw it with Marshall Faulk, we saw it with LaDainian Thomas, and like I said with Marcus Allen. He's that guy, and he's got so much wiggle, and he's powerful. So we tried to see it, and you saw in New Orleans with Reggie Bush a little bit too, but that's how I'd use him. So anywhere between 25 and 30-plus touches a game, depending on how those touches come to him, that's different. I don't want him carrying it 20 times in a short-yarded situation where unblocked guys are putting their hat on him because I need him. I can't afford to have him on the sidelines, but I also can't worry in a close game if I'm worried that he's going to get 5 more touches in 5 years or 8 years from now. It's going to diminish the back end of his career. I know that sounds wrong, but it really is a compliment to him on how bad he needs him. Try to imagine where they'd be without him right now.
That's offensively. Great. That's great perspective.
Try to imagine where they'd be. There would be a bad situation offensively, even with Sean Payton there without Alvin Kamara on that football team.
He's on Twitter at Sean Unfiltered. Several weeks ago, I asked you about Jameis, and I'd like to revisit that. I saw an interesting stat this morning, Sean, where Jameis has 4 games with no turnovers. That's the same number he had in his last 2 years in Tampa combined. So,
right.
So I'm curious your perspective because Sean Payton has clearly protected Jameis and he's making better decisions. They've limited the turnovers, but the question is at what cost? So game maybe 1 or 2 when you and I had this conversation, now reevaluate game 6, week 7. Is there a point where Sean Payton can feel comfortable maybe taking the training wheels off and letting him rip it a little bit?
I think so, as long as this stuff that Sean's put him through now, Jameis realizes the reasons why they're doing this. And then when they have a game, at some point, Matty, they're going to have to cut it loose. They're going to run into a game where the other team can score on them. Their defense has played outstanding. I know it was raining and the rest of it. No Russ Wilson, I don't care. You play the schedule and you go dominate, and they did. They did their thing again. And it's going to come to a point. Don't they play Tampa coming up next week?
It's Halloween night in the Dome.
It's not going to be 13-10. Okay, I'm just telling you that. It isn't going to be 13-10. So you're probably now, Sean going into the game may say protect it, play a little horizontal football. Jameis, let's keep the ball out of Brady's hands. But if they get behind, then that mechanism to Jameis clicks in and kicks in. Who is he? Now, listen, I feel the same way I did. I'm impressed with the way Jameis is protecting the football. And I saw a stat this morning also, man. I think it was like 6-point-some yards an attempt last night. But there was also one that when the ball left his hand in the air, less than 4 yards. Less than 4 yards per the ball was in the air per attempt. Meaning they're throwing it behind the line of scrimmage, the short stuff, and going. There were some drop balls, and the perimeter's got to play better, and they got to get more separation. There's no question. But we always go to the head coach and the quarterback. That's just the burden you bear because you make big money or you're the quarterback. That's the way it is, and you're replacing a legend that threw 35 times with his eyes closed and completed 29 of them in Drew Brees. So with this, I think that it's going to rear its head at some point. I understand why Sean's doing it. Now, I don't know if I've had this private meeting, but I feel like when I watched him that Sean, when he brought him in originally, said, here's what we're going to do, bud. And instead of sugarcoat and say, here's your weakness. Great arm. You trust it too much. And Jameis in there saying, I understand. I've watched Drew Brees. I got to be more like him. So in the process of doing this, they've gone to be more like him. Tom Brady was going through that with Bruce Arians at the beginning of last year. Bruce wanted to push it, and Tom tried to do it, and it wasn't Tom's game, and he threw a bunch of picks. So what happened? After that Kansas City second half, after they took a butt whooping and then came back in the second half, they kind of meshed. I'm waiting for that breakout game where he goes 32 of 45 and protects it and doesn't turn it over 4 times, which is obviously statistically tougher to do, but it's going to have to happen. And they can't. I'm just telling you, Matty, in this football, they're not going to win games going for $127. I'm talking about in January. Sure. While it's all fine and dandy, and if you protect the ball, you'll be in games. But he is going to have to win games for them. He's doing it right, and I think a game manager's a compliment. I do, protecting it. You're not turning it over. The coach has specifically said, here's what we're doing, so live by it. And Jameis has done a hell of a job doing it. And I know it's in his DNA, like, man, I'm a carnivore, but now you're making me, when am I going to go back to being a carnivore where I can eat all that meat that's out there and throw that ball on seam routes and go? Because that's where he's lived. That's been Jameis. But I applaud him wholeheartedly. This is, like I said, one of my 5 biggest storylines going into the year, and still is, because I watch him. I say, okay, when's he going to miss? Oh, nice. Okay, when's he going to take chances? Sean, and they obviously are having this conversation. You protect the ball first. We'll worry about big plays second. So I listen. They're winning, but it is going to come to a point when the governor's going to have to come off. Sean knows this, and Jameis knows it, but he's building him up. The question is, Jameis mentally, where will he be when Sean says, dude, we're down 17 at half. We got to cut it loose now. We got to let it rip. And Sean's been known to do that, so we'll see if they can. But I don't know how you can criticize a guy who's protecting the football, which is what we ask, and he's doing exactly what the head coach wants him to.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.